My name is Tarek. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel.
We've reached the final 8 teams at the FACEIT Major London. The champion will be one of these 8. And this is not going to be a preview for the quarterfinals. I'm not going to take each match and break down the map vetoes and the map pool and compare stylistic strengths. These are my thoughts on the draw, some of the storylines it sets up, who drew who, whether that's fair, whether it's such a hard draw, whether it was an easy draw. First and foremost, before we start, reaching this point in the tournament, yes, I think in the context of past majors. So every single major in the history of CSGO has been like this once you reach the round of 8. You play a single elimination, 8-team bracket in which you have to win 3 best of 3s and you win the championship. You've already secured Legend spot for next season. It's the same as it was in every other major. Now, that's okay. And if something has a continuity to it, I've seen many of these tournaments. It's not a terrible format. But as someone who every year hunkers down to watch the international, fucking hell, I wish we had a better format at this point in time. This is a decent format, except I don't think the format that leads up to it is very well done. But come on, man. Like, it is true. If this 8-team bracket had the top 8 teams in the world in, I'd be a bit more excited and I wouldn't be as apprehensive about this particular format, although I'd certainly still consider it something of an issue. So if we had a seeded Swiss system or we had GSL with full best of 3s, it'd be a lot easier to feel happier about the teams that are here. But I think of something like the international and I look at this particular round of 8 and I think, imagine if this was double elimination. Imagine if, yeah, okay, let's say Complexity lose to MIBR, but then they go on a lower bracket run and they beat out Big and then they beat out Hellraisers. I don't think Hellraisers is going to be that point in terms. You know what you see my point? Or they beat out FaZe and then they play against Navi in a lower bracket. This would be amazing shit. Whoever wins then, fucking hell, that'd be unreal. It'll still be legit as it is, but it'd be even more ironclad, even more difficult. I also wish, quite frankly, the final was a best of 5. I think it brings out the best. I think it's really hard to flukily win a best of 5. It's hard to flukily win a best of 3, but it can happen, certainly, especially if you get the right opponent where he's got a one map, you're good on the other. You get to a third one, it's a tiebreaker one. It's really close. It's a 60-40 to one of you. That can happen. But best of 5, it's very difficult to fluke a best of 5. If you're the best team, you can dominate and go 3-0, or you can dominate, or you can go 3-0 and have it not be dominant, like when FaZe beat Australis back at IM Sydney. I think just the amount of play, bigger play on the map pool, less of the veto having a say. I also wish it was a best of 5 final. Now, with all of that to one side, let's look at these 4 matchups. So we've got Complexity against MIBR, Big against Navi, Team Liquid against Hellraisers, and then at the end, we've got Australis versus the FaZe Clan. So let's start here. Complexity, a team that went 3-0 against Made in Brazil, MIBR, who went 3-2 and obviously had to go against G2 to get out. First and foremost, sucks for Complexity. Basically, with the exception of the possibility of drawing Hellraisers, who also went 3-2, it was going to have to be a rough draw for this squad, unfortunately, because they went 3-0, so you'd hope that they're going to get like a team that's not as hard in the quarterfinals. But look who else is in there. Could have been FaZe Clan. Could have been, well, yeah, that's it. Could have been FaZe Clan or it could have been Hellraisers. So of the 3, you want Hellraisers. MIBR, I guess on paper, that's not as bad as FaZe Clan. Then again, though, looking like a more well-rounded team than FaZe Clan at the moment. FaZe Clan, you don't want to play primarily because they've got so much raw talent. It's going to be hard to win 2 out of 3 maps against them and outfrag them. So generally, I have to say, rough draw for Complexity, but that's just the nature of the tournament. Amazing draw for MIBR, literally the best draw possible. I mean, remember, they could have had Team Liquid. They could have had Navi. They could have had, who else? Let me think at this point in time. Well, they could have had Big. They could have had Australis. These are all, I guess Big, it's debatable, but I would say Big's a better team overall than Complexity. They've shown us more in tournaments. They've got a better map pool, better in-game leader. You know, And all in all, if you're MIBR, this is the best possible draw you could get as a 3-2 team. This is a squad that's very beatable. In fact, you come in as the favourite. This is a team that hasn't shown its full map pool, but as a result, I'm not that worried about that. Like, the fact they haven't shown me they can win on those maps against top teams, I'm not thinking they have a super deep map pool. You have the fire art power edge, certainly over this squad. Then throw in every player on your team is already a major champion. Meanwhile, all 5 players of Complexity are making their first ever playoff appearance at a major. So odds of them, some of them getting nervous, some of them not playing at their absolute peak, some of them being in awe of playing against major champions. These are all factors over a best of 3 you have to take into consideration. They've never been on a big stage like this before. Then you look at MIBR, all veterans to some degree. I mean, nowadays, if someone's played 2 or 3 years, they are a veteran, I'm afraid. Stewie2K, admittedly, is only making his 2nd appearance in the playoffs, but he is the reigning fucking champion of the tournament, so even then, hard to call him much of a rookie anymore. For Tarek and Stewie, this is a chance to go back-to-back with titles, and this bracket draw suddenly is making it not seem as implausible as it had seemed at the beginning of the major. Basically, if they beat this team, who they're favoured to beat, they're probably playing Navi in the next round. If not playing Navi, playing Big, so either way, favoured to beat Big and with a shot to beat Navi, who's looking a bit ropey. And if you do that, you're in the final. If you can make it to the final, yeah, if you get Australis, it's going to be very rough. But this is like a legit chance to do with something special at the majors. Then you got to consider both teams play in the NA region because MIBR is stationed over there. That means, in theory, for Complexity, there should be less fear and intimidation because you played against these players, you maybe played against this team. But you know what? It's also less of a surprise factor. If instead you'd drawn FaZe Clan, right, FaZe Clan isn't a team that's intimately familiar with the call players, with the call style. They wouldn't have that many demos against top-level opposition to go off. MIBR might have practiced against call. So actually, I think that also hurts Complexity overall, even though it also could allow them to play their game a little bit more rather than getting awed by the names like they might against Nico in a way you won't against Fallen because you played against him a whole much. I think the 2 players in this team for Complexity that have a lot to prove have got to be Ye and Stanislaw. Because Ye did so well to get Complexity to this point in the tournament, and Stanislaw, seemingly, if he does anything else in this tournament, has really boosted his stock as an in-game leader and is starting to look like someone again who has to be in the discussion for best NA in-game leader, someone who he's not going to be given up, but teams like Cloud9, Team Liquid again are going to, he's back on their radar in the future potentially because he's piloting a bunch of players who've been around a long while. They're not brand new players. They're players who played in invite teams. They're players who even played on Complexity and other teams, but they haven't done anything yet until Stanislaw came along and became their in-game leader. Then look at Rambo, the coach. First ever chance, he's coached this team to the legend spot of a major. Before that, he took MVP Project, who was a team where they had old legendary 1.6 players who were washed up as fuck. Some of them still are. And he started to make them look legit, almost beat Virtus Pro on LAN. So again, credit going to him as well. I will say, MIBR comes in as map with some pressure on them because this is a team they're supposed to beat. This is one where, because of the bracket, they should at a minimum be making top 4 with a chance to go to the final. So no excuses for MIBR. I mean, they managed to come up with them anyway. This is a real good chance to get top 2 at the major, to really assert yourself in a new fashion. And if you're Yanko, going against a team like Complexity, who everyone else hasn't really had the read of, no one's really figured out how to play against them, this is a chance for you to really show you've done your homework, bottle down, hunker down, manage to completely 2-0 this team, make it look clean, and go into that semi-finals against Navi or Big, feeling like you can be the favourite, even though you probably won't be unless it's Big. Now, in terms of the Big versus Navi matchup, 2, 3, and 1 teams, I'll go ahead and say I always feel bad for the 2, 3, and 1 teams that get drawn against each other because it's kind of like, okay, you're getting a team from the same area, but you could have got a 3-2 team. You know, one of the other 3 and 1 teams did get a 3-2 team. Now, in this particular case, it was Australis getting FaZe Clan, so actually, you don't necessarily want that. But in theory, it could have also been Australis getting Hellraisers, so that would have been the dream scenario. And if you're Big or if you're Navi, you're thinking, couldn't I have had fucking Hellraisers? I would have liked that, but you didn't get it. So if you're Big, ignoring records is a tough draw. I mean, you could have had Hellraisers. You definitely want them if possible. You could have had FaZe, a team you've beaten already. And you could have had MIBR, who admittedly, with a different player, you've beaten already when they still had Bolts back at ESL1 Cologne. Admittedly, you also had FaZe Clan still had Croman at that time, I guess you have to add. But those are teams where, you have a reason to be confident against them. Against Navi, No, that's not really a team you're that confident against. They beat you in a best of 5, 3-1. So right now you have no reason to have big confidence against them. Then again, though, to be fair, could also have been worse. You could have drawn Australis, which I'm going to go ahead and say, with Big's playing style, with Big's firepower issues, with big maps, with Big's wide but not super deep map pool, I'm saying that's an instant elimination. So actually, all in all, I guess you have to say it could have been better, but okay, we'll take this. It's kind of middling overall. I think Navi got the dream draw. Remember, as a 3-1 team, they could have gotten teams like Team Liquid, a team that's beaten them a whole bunch recently. Australis, a team that they've beaten, but is looking in better form and is the number 1 team in the world. You don't want to play them in the round of 8. So Navi instead gets a team they've already beaten. They beat them in that final. So okay, if you're big, sure, you had your slip-ups in the challenger stage, but you came through. You come through over the whole tournament with outrageous numbers from Smooya. Absolutely inconceivable numbers that there's no way he can maintain because, well, I guess he could if he just lost 2-0, but they were close and he got good frags. But in theory, put it this way, for the rest of his career, these are not at all maintainable numbers. Like, these are numbers where, like, obviously you're not going to finish the tournament with these numbers and go deep, but if you did, you would be like one of the greatest MVPs of all time statistically. So that's how above and beyond his numbers have been thus far. And if you think of him as a player, he's not someone who's going to get monster frags a lot of the time. He's going to play more of an impact game and do a good job with the AWP. So I expect those numbers to level off, especially against a team like Navi. Now, Tabson's been pretty strong as you'd expect, but that's something you expect from Tabson in the big squad and that they need. The big issue in the Legends stage was Nex getting his shit back together again, where he was really terrible in the Challenger stage, but they survived despite it. Now they're in the Legends phase, he got his game together a little bit more, and finally you're getting some of the firepower coming online for this team, because that was a nightmare going into that Legends stage with him in that kind of form. Now, obviously he traditionally hasn't done well in majors. Let's see if that continues on into the playoffs. Navi, quite frankly, has looked a bit ropey thus far. They've really leaned heavily on Simple and Electronic for a lot of the games. But to be honest, even those two are still enough firepower to edge out Big in that respect and get that advantage. This is obviously a rematch of the ESL1 Cologne final. Navi was stronger back then, arguably at their very peak. They're a bit weaker now. Big, I'd say, since that was a one-off tournament, I'd say this is more like their real level. I think it was still, overall, a fairly close final. Like, a bunch of the maps were tight. So if you're big, you have some confidence coming in. But I also think if you're Navi, this is exactly the match you wanted as a tune-up to get you into that semi-finals and play against, hopefully, MIBR. Map pool's interesting because Navi had a very strong map pool back at that time. Now it's a bit more shaky. The problem is, Bigs isn't as good as they seem to think, quite frankly. And a bunch of the maps they want to play on are maps that Navi is more than happy to. But as long as Dust 2 isn't banned by Navi, Dust 2 is available for Big, and that is a potential free win map, which is unreal to think you could get against a top 2 or 3 team in the world if you're a team like Big. So Big has a very good chance to get one map in the series if Dust 2 can be drawn. God B into his first ever playoffs, second. I guess he made the one with Big before it. So second ever playoffs major. Last time he was actually favoured against Immortals, but he blew it. I mean, favoured by some people. I personally thought Immortals was going to win that all day. But okay, this time he wants to make it different, right? Against a team that he's, again, the underdog against. Can he prevail this time? Number 2 ranked team in the world. Would be a big scalp to claim. Nex is obviously battling those past demons. Still has not gotten through them. Simple is into his 6th playoff at a major. The guy is like, what? I think he's 21, just about to turn 22. Or is he 20 still? I think he might be... I don't fucking know. Doesn't really matter. But my point is, it sounds like a lot to be in his 6th, right? Because he's such a young player. This is a guy who had to miss a bunch because of being banned from ESL majors. Also, if he wins this match, he will be through to his 4th semi-final. This is big time shit. He's also obviously seeking a major if Navi can really get rolling. Because if he gets a major, I mean, sure, it's Australis' era at the moment, while it's looking like it, but this is individually his era. And if he could cap his individual era with a major win with a team that we all know isn't number 1, that is greatness on a level that you barely ever see. I can't think of any player whose team, I mean, I guess his team is technically ranked number 2 now, so it seems unfair, but then again, he has to hard carry them so much. I think it would be one of the great accomplishments in World Counter-Strike if he could win a major with this squad. Now, for Navi, generally, this is a great chance to go, not just the semis, but to the final. And so they really need to capitalise on it because we know they're a team with some internal issues, with players that have thought about going elsewhere. There's a potential for roster moves after this tournament in terms of the Gambit squad breaking up, words about a CIS super team being made. Obviously, you'd be targeting players like Electronic and Simple for that. There's a lot of question marks around Navi that they can only solve by winning this major, quite frankly. Now, Team Liquid versus Hellraisers. If you're Team Liquid, it's the best possible draw you could have gotten. Remember, you could have had FaZe or MRBR. Okay, teams that at the moment you're favoured to beat, but you don't want to play either of those in a major quarterfinal. You want to play Hellraisers, a very inexperienced team, a team that your firepower neutralises. You've got better firepower. You've got a better map pool. They're not a very tactical team. You've got pretty solid tactics and routine. You've got the confidence advantage over them. Everything's going your way if you're Team Liquid. If you're Hellraisers, this is a tough draw. You'd have preferred to get complexity here or to get big. But okay, I guess you're going to have to settle for Team Liquid, one of the teams that's looked one of the best in the tournament so far. Team Liquid's back in the playoffs of the major for the first time since Simple left them back in 2016, and even then he was only standing in for that ESL1 clone. They now have a legit chance to go to at least the semis, but if they get to the semis, obviously they'll face probably Australis, we figure, right? That could be a potential, that was the real final scenario before the actual grand final itself. Then again, if you're Team Liquid, you should be thinking this way. We'll take care of Hellraisers. Okay, if we play Australis, that's not guaranteed yet. If we play Australis, this is the way we have to think. If we beat them, we can win the whole tournament. So if we beat them, we're favoured against anyone in the final. Navi, MIBR. Favoured against Navi anyway. MRBR, you're a better team. And if you just beat Australis, everyone's going to say you win the major. So I think if you're Team Liquid, you think about it that way. It's like my tweet to them. Are you going to keep fucking around? Or are you actually going to elevate and play like a legendary team? Let's see what their answer is according to their play. By the way, we know that Team Liquid, people don't want to think about this, has been upset in the past. They're the ones that lost to North at ESL1 Clone. They're the ones that got bounced by Energy in the first round of Star Series. So they've had some underwhelming playoff runs. If that happens here with Hellraisers and Woxic and Nissa go ham and they lose a best of 3 to Hellraisers, that's going to be really disappointing, really depressing if you're a fan of Team Liquid, and it's going to ask serious questions of Team Liquid, who is a team who's been unable to fully step up because they're the only elite team this year you can pretty much think of who hasn't won a trophy at all. Then you've got to consider, if you're Taco, who came to this team to be the difference maker, to bring that veteran grit, the guy who's been there before, if you can win this tournament and Team Liquid has a real shot to win this one, you now set yourself apart from all the other Brazilians. You know when people make that stupid joke to make FNX sound sick, like, he's won 100% of CSGO majors? How about if Taco can say, I am the Brazilian player with the most major titles won and I stand alone? That's pretty fucking gangster. So there's something for him to be gunning for, right? Then you've got to consider, since Team Liquid could win this major, amazingly, there is a legit chance that NA could win back-to-back majors and have it be a different team each time. That would have been inconceivable before the E-League Boston final. Then you've got to look at the fact, okay, Naf and Twists, two of the best players on Team Liquid, first ever major playoffs for them. What will they do? Will they choke? I've seen Twists underperform in the past already in big final scenarios. Will he live up to his billing so far? He's been one of the players of the tournament. Woxic and Asa into their first major playoffs. Okay, a lot of pressure on them because they're going to have to hard carry their main win condition for Hellraisers. But listen, fair fucks to them already. I think it's legit as fuck what they've accomplished. A lot of respect for both of them individually, especially Issa, who's been the hard carry. But Woxic has done so much in the past to get Hellraisers here. I think there's a lot of pressure on you as a young star to know you have to carry. But I want to see them live up to the challenge. And if they can do it, hey, they're starting to accelerate their career path big time. And I know teams like Mouse and FaZe are going to have potential openings in their lineups in the next few months. So let's see if you can go ahead and audition for a win there. If you can go ahead and audition for a place there, win or lose in this match, quite frankly. How about Angel, in-game leader at Hellraisers? First time back in this position, playoffs of a major, since DreamHack Winter 2014. This is a guy who was in elite teams for the first few years in CSGO, Virtus.pro, Astana Dragons. By the time they got to Hellraisers, they dropped off, but still making playoffs of the major. So this is his chance to be back again. Is he going to make a use of it, or is he just going to fall away? Past Hellraisers teams with the old V4 country players were making upsets in playoff scenarios. Can they do the same now? Doesn't seem likely, but let's see. Because that's the thing, if you're Hellraisers, you're playing with house money now. Just making legends, you're already at the next major. Again, you came from the minor. You're already in a scenario where people are impressed with what you've done. But you know what? If you go any further, if you can go to the semis, You got a chance to actually again prove the international roster concept and make even more teams consider going international rather than staying within their borders. Right, the last matchup, Australis versus FaZe. On paper, very saucy lineup, especially because you got Olaf back in FaZe, and obviously these are the teams that I actually wanted to see battle the whole time it was Australis establishing their era, but Olaf was injured. Now, this is not an outrageous draw for Australis in context. It's tougher than you'd expect overall, but you look at it, okay, if you're it's tough in as much as you've got a team in FaZe that has the talent to win the major, the aspirations to win the major, almost the pressure to win the major. But you know what? This also could have been Navi, a team that's beaten you. Could have been MIBR, a team that in the past has given you some troubles. So, yeah, it's sort of in the middle, right? Also could have been Hellraisers, a team you dream of playing at this point in time. So, I'd say around the middle for that draw. For FaZe, toughest possible draw. You could have had complexity. You dream of a matchup like that. You could have had Big, again, love to play them and have some revenge. You could have played Navi, a team that, okay, you've got the firepower to beat. Could have played Team Liquid, a team that hasn't been super deep in majors yet with this particular core. Again, you'd feel like we have the experience edge. Instead, you've ended up with Australis, the number one team in the world, and a team that has fucking battered you last few times it played them. Admittedly, not with Olafmeister in the mix. Now, Olafmeister, as everyone knows, is the only player to make the playoffs of all 13 majors. In a way, it's fitting because he is one of the true legends, one of the all-time great players to ever play this game. So kind of cool that he maintained it. I would have hoped in the same sense that Fnatic had made it, so Crims could have shared that, and they would be the only players to make every single one, or did. No, it doesn't make sense. I guess Fnatic made it in the other one. So, yeah, that wouldn't matter. But whatever. I think Olaf and Crims should always be paired together. If he beats Australis, then winning the major becomes very possible. And what people have not stopped and thought about is because the storyline in FaZe is obviously the ones who haven't won the major win the major. If Olaf wins the major, he becomes the first and only player in history with 4 major titles. Now, yes, that wouldn't be a 4th title as a star and no, actually, that's wrong. Fuck, he becomes someone with 3. Right, okay, rephrase that. He becomes the player who joins JW, Flusher, and Pronax as players with 3 major titles. But the difference is he would have done it with 2 different teams, which is pretty impressive and a record in its own right. So that would be pretty epic. And obviously to join those guys would be fitting anyway, because they all played in one of the greatest teams ever. But they all have an extra major from that first major. Yeah, I don't know why I thought 4 for a second there. Lots of storylines in this one. FaZe is a team that beat this Australis lineup. These 2 lineups played when Australis was very new. I am Katowice in the semi-finals, and FaZe beat them. Close game, but FaZe won it just convincingly enough. Then FaZe with Exist as a stand-in beat Australis in the final of IM Sydney, a match that definitely is in the minds of the Australis players. After that, though, Australis was banging on FaZe like a drum, smashing them completely. Australis has been the dominant team in the game, whereas it was FaZe back when they first met that was in that position, trying to capitalise on an era, trying to win all the tournaments, always a favourite to go deep. Australis wants to win a second major, make themselves a truly legendary core. Someone like Glaive win 2 majors, put himself up there as potentially greatest in-game leader of all time. Device trying to exceed people like Forrest, Snacks. So many players join the company of Olafmeister, Crims, etc., Fall and Coldzera. This is exactly where these guys want to be. Then you go over the other side of the equation. Carrigan wants to win his first major. He's been in position so many times, never done it once. Also, he's done well against his old Australis team so many times that he played them before. But is he calling now? Because he wasn't calling after they went 0-2 in the Legends stage. Carrigan, Guardian, Nico, and Rain, obviously all looking to win their first major. All, in theory, would be worthy winners. They are some of the greatest players we've ever had in this game. I particularly hope Guardian wins it. But Guardian and Carrigan are 2 I obviously pull for, because I feel like they're players who, as much as it's a bullshit loaded term, deserve to have won a major. I mean, I guess no one deserves anything. Australis has a sick map pool. FaZe has a shaky map pool that makes it a bit less sexy. Australis was blowing people out, but have been having a lot more close games. Close games are where we know a team like FaZe could break them, has happened, but can FaZe make it close? Because they haven't looked that strong themselves recently, quite frankly, hence why they were 0-2. I hope for just an amazing game. I hope both teams come with their peak form, inspired play, that they work each other up into a lather, really go ham, that it's brutal series, and whoever wins, it's one of the great series of all time, because it has the potential to be like that. If Australis wins, they are set up at this major, not just to win second major, but to do it with a godlike run, to beat FaZe Clan, potentially to beat Team Liquid, looking at the hottest team in the tournament in the semi-finals. Also a rival of theirs. To beat Navi in the final, a team hoping to be crowned with the best player in the world, maybe the best player ever in Simple. Or to beat MIBR in the final, a team that already has all the champions in their team. So they're either going to take out all the would-be champions, FaZe, Team Liquid, Navi, or they're going to take out some of them and then beat a team with 5 major champions in it and stop some of them getting a great storyline. I think the best game is actually going to be FaZe Australis. I think you can put aside form. I think they'll come to play. There's so many legendary players in that server. You're going to have an epic 3 maps, I think. Then, biggest chance of an upset is actually going to be Big versus Navi. Big actually has the possibility to do this. Navi's looked ropey enough. Their map pool actually looking a little bit dodgy compared to what it was a few months ago. I don't think they're as confident and comfortable on some of the maps. So Big has a shot there. It's just going to take everything they've got. I think the least interesting matchup is Team Liquid versus Hellraisers. I think Team Liquid will brutalize Hellraisers, and it won't matter even if Issa and Wasik turn up, because it's best 2 out of 3. This video was kindly supported by Gardner Wilson, Dean Tanglis, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, godawfulwasteofspace, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to appear in my content? Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers for upcoming content and guests? Want to take part in a discussion about esports with me? Put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today. Link in the description box.